The All-SEC team did come out, and let's take a look at that. First team offense, All-SEC. There were no Tennessee players on there, which is I know people left, but it's kind of phenomenal to think you had a Blitnikoff Award winner, you had a Heisman Trophy candidate. I know they're gone, but to not have one on the first team offense was pretty surprising. Tennessee also didn't have a player on the first team defense. Same for specialists. The All SEC second team offense had Bru McCoy, which I think is incredibly respectful because of what you hear behind closed doors about Bru McCoy, who I've been told may be the best NFL prospect on this team and likely is. And you had center Seth McLaughlin of Alabama get the second team center position. I'm going to tell you why I don't like that, because I think Cooper Mays, and I talked to some people about this that evaluate talent while we were down there, that Cooper Mays is highly respected. I mean, he's going to be a guy that is going to garner a lot of draft love because of the way he plays with leverage, and he's very secure with the football, as you would expect. But Bru McCoy is the only one to make the second team, which, given his limited amount of play last year, because you had Jalen Hyatt catching so many balls, Ramel Keaton caught the unbelievable pass, the diving pass, and we're constantly worried about Cedric Tillman. When's he going to be back? I thought it was a little surprising he made second team. I think when all is said and done, Bru McCoy, assuming Joe Milton plays like he can, will be a first team player at the end of the year. So you go down a little bit further. Tennessee with no second team specialist. So let's get to the third team offense. Joe Milton makes it at quarterback. Javontez Spraggins makes it on the offensive line, and then Cooper Mays makes it on the offensive line. Cooper definitely deserves to be honored. I would have him second team. That's where I voted him. Spraggins, that's very debatable depending on which direction you want to go. But Joe Milton III, this is a down year at quarterbacks, probably the worst in about 10 years. But you surprised to see him get any sort of nod for third team preseason All SEC? Were you surprised?
I wasn't, because I think many media members covering college football have been influenced by what happened in spring, and where it became very clear that Milton didn't lose the starting job. So there's cautious optimism behind Joe Milton, the same way there is with the person he tied with, which was Mississippi State quarterback Will Rogers, who was very good last year. People just don't know if he can still be good in Mike Leach's system. So I understand why there was kind of that. I understand how they could be tied for third team together. What surprised me was the overall number. So Tennessee was technically tied for seventh in terms of all SEC players with 4 in the SEC. But Dave, you know this. There's all SEC numbers and all SEC representation. If you factor in weight more heavily first team versus second team versus third team, Tennessee was 11th in all SEC representation. I don't think anybody thinks they're going to be one of the 4 worst teams in the conference this year.
So as media members, do we need to evolve our thinking a little bit? Do we need to include the Dante Thorntons of the world, the Keenan Pilleys of the world, those transfers that teams take in that have had success at other schools? That's asking a lot, because a lot of these are beat reporters who just cover one school. We pride ourselves in having a working knowledge of several schools, primarily Tennessee, as you would imagine. But I don't know that you'll see transfer portal guys make it in based off pretty much tradition. But if you wanted to make an argument for Keenan Pilley, or in particular a Dante Thornton, I think you could certainly do that. What player, though, not that was a transfer, deserves to be on one of these lists that is not currently?
I mean, I would say obviously it's got to be Dante Thornton, because I believe in him so much as a player. I'm with you in Keenan Pili, but I think Dante Thornton is probably the most deserving. I will tell you the most deserving transfer who's not on this list, and it would be at Tennessee's expense. I don't see how you don't put Devin Leary 13 at Kentucky over Milton or Will Rogers. Devin Leary has proven way more as a starting quarterback than either of those guys.
That's fair all around. But are there any players that because I don't think the SEC media is in tune with picking transfer portal players later. Are there any players on Tennessee's roster that played last year for the Vols that you would make an argument should be on this list?
Any players that Squirrel White, I think, if sometimes they got to factor potential into account, and if anybody saw flashes of Squirrel White, you'd know that he could be an elite superstar this year at receiver for Tennessee.
I agree. I think Ramel Keaton is just a little bit short of that. And then we get into the running back discussion. I mean, I know Tennessee, like most teams, splits it up between Jabari Small and Jalen Wright. And they're going to split it up even more with Dylan Sampson this year, I believe. And then we'll see what Cameron's able to do in his first year. But I'm kind of surprised that one of those guys didn't get mentioned, at least, because if you want to correct me if I'm wrong on this, I think combined they had around about 2,000 yards. I think Jalen was right at 1,000. So to me, if you have 1,000 yards the year before, you should certainly be on this list. I don't have a problem with Jaden Daniels being the first team quarterback, because if you ask most people who's the best quarterback in the league, most people would say Jaden Daniels. I even asked some people, would you take Jaden?
And also because we're all closeted LSU fans on this site, but
That's true. But I asked him, I said, if you were to take Jaden Daniels or Hendon Hooker going into this year, that was about 60-40 Hendon Hooker. There were some people who really liked Jaden Daniels' upside. So I'm not surprised that Joe Milton was third. I personally would have him over KJ Jefferson. I realize that KJ Jefferson has done more, but I just listen, when we're having a conversation of these guys going on and playing pro ball in about 120 days, KJ Jefferson may be in the conversation. Joe Milton is going to be in the conversation unless something goes incredibly awry.
Yes. And also, we really have to question KJ Jefferson I think Kendall Briles is gone now, and I think Dan Enos is there, right? So you really have to question KJ Jefferson this year. So it's hard to know what's going to happen with that.
All right. So, but any other player you think, give me 3 players that will be on the postseason list that aren't on the preseason list.
From Tennessee?
Yeah. And I'm going to go first. I'm going to go Dante Thornton / Squirrel White. And then I'm going Beasley and Peely. So I really picked 4.
2 linebackers? Both linebackers are going to be all SEC, yes. Man?
I think, and here's the other thing that works against me is they just do 2 teams after the year. They do 3 teams before the year. So I might get burned on this one. But, yeah, that's where I'm going.
All right. I'm just going to say, I'll actually take a stand and I'll say Squirrel White. And I was a Dante Thornton believer before spring practice, but my list is fluid and Squirrel White did not give up the slot job so it's going to be Squirrel White for me. Gerald Mincey at right tackle, I think is going to shock a lot of people. And then I got a freshman going on there, Jordan Matthews at cornerback.
Wow. Not even thinking about Ricky Gibson. You're just good with Jordan Matthews.
I love Louisiana kids.
Yeah, you do.